Mr. Speaker, consider the case of Ann Demerel, a USAID worker who was posted in the U.S. Embassy in Beirut in 1983. At 1 p.m. on April 18th, a suicide bomber in a delivery van drove 2,000 pounds of explosives into the front door of our U.S. Embassy, and the blast demolished the front of the building and caused the upper floors to collapse on top of each other. And when that went off, she was eating lunch in the embassy cafeteria until suddenly she awoke outside, covered in cement, with 19 bones broken, 63 people killed in that blast. Now, we have a moral obligation to ensure that these judgments for these victims, which represent Iran's legal debt to the victims of its official policy of terrorism, are paid. There have been 90 such attacks on Americans, and this legislation helps us fulfill that moral obligation we have to our constituents and to all Americans. What I will share with you is that it is not going to work to release the $100 billion first, because that $100 billion goes into the hands of the IRGC. They are the ones who have taken over the companies in Iran as of 1979. And the Iranian Revolutionary Force and the Quds forces are the ones that carried out these attacks. So the only leverage we're going to have in this negotiation is if we pass legislation that says, first, you've got $20 billion in reserves, start the process of paying the victims of that attack. If we don't get them paid now, if we don't get the survivors and the family members of those who were killed paid now, it will never happen later. But more importantly, at least we would do this. If we're going to give $100 billion out of escrow into the hands of the IRGC, what do you think they're going to do with it? They've already announced $20 billion in sales to Russia for fighter planes. They've already announced the money, $100 million, that they're going to give to Hezbollah. Why not at least get our own civilians paid the judgments that they earned up front? That is exactly what we did with the Lockerbie Agreement. We were going to lift the sanctions or allow the return of the escrowed money to Libya, right? $2.5 billion had to go to the victims of the family members killed in the Pan Am 103 bombing because of the judgment in U.S. courts. This needs to be done under that procedure. That's why this legislation is necessary. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.